where a lot of the projects through DARPA and a lot of the funding through our universities are being done, and a lot of it non-consensually, to citizens with here in the United States. Would you agree?
Oh yes, and I think that in a sense, this fallout was very positive because it shows that they should have passed it, that there's a problem there, and that a lot of people really need help. And so that came out with this. And then if it's going to be analyzed more, so I mean, it's a real problem, and it's a real problem everywhere. And I'm in almost constant or frequent contact, daily contact with Melanie Veredichan in Belgium, who is attacked just horrendously by electronic stuff, Imagineering, all manner of tortures, and violent gang stalking. I'll have to use that word. They break and enter every time she goes out. They rip up her apartment. It's horrendous. Mm-hmm. And so I think we can look forward to that occurring here. In fact, I've just talked to some people who have experienced that sort of stuff. Unless we nip it, unless we put up some barriers to this organized assault on individuals.
Well, you're very right, and it's interesting that Kucinich in his initial proposal did talk about the theater that was being used, the theater tactics, and which assimilates with this gang stalking claims that a lot of the victims talk about. Now, what's interesting here is that the mayor of Richmond voted against this, and there was another city council member who voted against this. And unfortunately, 2 minutes was not enough. But there were some compelling statements made by some of the presenters. I did the introduction. Dr. Spencer, of course, you spoke there on behalf of the victims and what needs to be done. And a good friend of yours, Dr. Spencer, Ben Colson, yes, PhD, psychologist, also spoke, and he gave just a phenomenal presentation, which perked the ears of some of those city council members, and we were quite pleased because we were only given two minutes, but when he spoke, they started to ask him questions and to recite his references that he was giving, and he talked about all the $1 billion that are being spent on brain technologies today. There's a war for control of your mind.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to play that soundbite of Ben Colson's testimony to the Richmond City Council. Listen here.
I thank you all. Okay, 2 minutes. All right, let's go. Thank you all for your endurance. I see you've listened to a lot of humans. I'm going to talk really fast with 2 minutes to go. I'm a psychologist. I have evaluated many targeted individuals who have previously been diagnosed as delusional and psychotic, and my job is to deconstruct those diagnoses because of the methods of my colleagues that can actually detect advanced nanotechnology present in their bodies, both through frequency emissions and lymphatic, basically like when you fire a bullet, there's a trajectory, and the police can determine the trajectory. There are chemical tests to do that. I was just going to very quickly, since it's 2 minutes, this is this month's issue of Smithsonian Magazine, which says the future is here. Brain-to-brain communication is real. Targeted individuals report synthetic telepathy, voices in their skull, people putting thoughts in their heads, things that up until now we've been told are complete delusion and lock them up. But you know what? The capabilities exist. This is the National Nanotech Initiative. The last 15 years' budgets of $1.5 billion just by the federal government in non-black budgets. We don't know what they spend on the black budgets. Doing experimental programs showing how nanosensors in people can give us much more data about humanity. These technologies can be used for great good, but they have apparently also been used for tremendous evil in non-consensual human experimentation. There is great documentation on this. I do think it's a little unfortunate that confusion about the Space Preservation Act. There are these systems, SCADA they're called. The acronym stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition Systems. They include a component of satellite communication from a central command post, as well as components inside the human beings who are targeted individuals. So although there is a component of these weapon systems, and they are clearly weapon systems by the major nations on Earth, there's an arms race on for the mind at this time, control of the human mind. The Human Brain Initiative is part of it. If I only have 2 minutes, I have to stop there. I hope you will listen to these people. They are suffering greatly as non-consensual experimentees.
A question really quickly to the speaker. Could you repeat the names of those two references that you gave, the magazines? Could you give me the names of those again, please?
The first one, the current issue of the Smithsonian Magazine, a mainstream magazine, which in this month's issue says communicating brain to brain, and this is merely what they are releasing publicly. The majority of the most advanced weapon systems are classified, and we don't know the full capabilities. This is just the supplemental to the president's budget this year's the National Nanotechnology Initiative. And what I didn't get to say in my 2 minutes is the National Registry of Environmental Professionals, which certifies people to do all kinds of environmental quality testing, has just certified SCADA, Supervisory Control and Data Administration Systems, as something that needs to be studied for its environmental impact on on the environment in general. And I am part of the HSCADA task force, how these SCADA systems are impacting human beings. And there are thousands of reports from targeted individuals that crimes are being committed against them. And my intention in coming here tonight was to support their claims so that law enforcement, with as much support from political...
I think she asked you the names of the magazines, so,
okay.
yeah. So.
Yeah, and when Javanka Beckles heard that, you could see her ears perk up, and she took down that information. And our hopes is that they are going to heed our words, and this is just the beginning, and that we'll be able to build upon these type of resolutions and spread from city to city. That being said, I want to talk about some of the fallout. Now, Dr. Spencer, you, myself, Dr. John Hall, who has been a huge advocate, who also gave his book to each of the members called Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control, which talks about the history of non-consensual experimentation that has happened here in the United States against our citizens, and very eloquently describes it and where we are today, and he gives the pitfalls. And one of the biggest pitfalls is that there seems to be, and Ben Colson also alluded to this, there seems to be a huge loophole and a sort of this black hole within psychiatry today, in the mental health fields, in where there really needs to be some type of protocol that's written in before you diagnose anyone of any type of illness within psychiatry, that they have to rule out any of this non-consensual experimentation going on. Is that a good take on everything?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ed.
Well, I mean, we just have to raise the consciousness of everyone as best we can, and it can be difficult at times. We just keep moving along, and people learn. They are exposed to this, and they begin thinking about it.
So, those are some interesting tidbits. Now, here's talking about the fallout. One of the initial supporters, Captain Mark Gagan of the Richmond Police Department there, initially sat down with you, Dr. Spencer, Dr. Hall, Amy Anderson, and a couple of the victims and myself in a meeting, and talked about how he had encountered victims throughout his career but didn't know what it was, and now he finally understands. And all of a sudden there's a 360-degree turnaround, it seems like, because you have the media started to catch this story, and this story, quite frankly, went across our country, and that was very surprising. We had all kinds of coverage with regards to this, but most particularly what my concern was is that the San Jose Mercury News started interviewing victims, and those who are not familiar with this type of demographic, it can be pretty overwhelming, and it could be pretty easy to write these people away as wearing tinfoil hats or conspiracy theorists. regardless of the fact that Kucinich had wrote this bill to protect people from these types of atrocities. Now, Mark Gagan was quoted in the paper as basically saying that what needs to happen to anyone complaining of these types of things is they need to be referred out and medicated. Now, that was quite disappointing, because if Mark Gagan did say these things, and I did read the newspaper article and it does say this, then, my question is to the Richmond City Council is, it's very unfortunate that he would portray supporting victims and wanting to find a resolution and creating a program in which people can reach out and can be helped, particularly within the city of Richmond, and then turn around and basically backstab these victims who are already suffering. And my question would be, where are his credentials? Where does he stand? Is he a medical professional? Is he a mental health professional? Is he a psychiatrist who can diagnose and write a prescription for people who he deems mentally ill? And how does this affect his ability as a police officer? How do these biases really affect how he deals with the public? Those are the questions that should be raised by every person and all the constituents from the City Council in the City of Richmond. So this is the bottom line. If you have Captain Gagan, who is the PIO officer with regards to this topic, and there were other articles where Chief Magnus has said some similar things, the fact is that there had been other cities who adopted resolutions that are very similar and some almost identical to what the City of Richmond has just adopted with regards to the Space Preservation Act. And that would be your neighbor in Berkeley, California. This particular resolution was brought before the constituents, and they overwhelmingly supported and adopted this resolution. So then are we saying, Chief Magnus and Captain Gagan, and those of you in the City Council who would label these victims who you are torturing again because of your biases and your ignorance and really doing the research and looking at this topic for what it really is, are you then saying that the citizens of Berkeley should all be medicated? Are you then saying that the City Council members of Berkeley who voted for this resolution and supported it should be medicated? I think what really needs to happen is the original process which Captain Gagan had the doors open for, where there would be a process where you had a community-based resolution, where you had professionals and citizens working together to eliminate any or minimize any costs that are associated with implementing a program that would help victims who are otherwise have no resources out there. And some of these victims are committing suicide because of that. There is this feeling of complete hopelessness because they don't have officials like the ones who voted for this resolution who are willing to stand up and listen to their citizens and their constituents and support them. So I ask you to take a look in the mirror, and are you really doing the right thing for the people, or are you doing the right thing to keep your position? Until next time, I'm Jesse Beltran, and we thank Dr. Spencer, as always, for his support. See you then.
A child born today will grow up with no conception of privacy at all. They'll never know what it means to have a private moment to themselves, an unrecorded, unanalyzed thought. And that's a problem, because privacy matters. Privacy is what allows us to determine who we are and who we want to be. They'll never know what it means to have a private moment to themselves, an unrecorded, unanalyzed